New reporting by Politico alleges that President Obama will actively oppose Bernie Sanders if he appears to be headed towards the Democratic nomination. And a new study reveals that America's workforce is dying faster than any other wealthy country.
Team Rising is here with their thoughts. Will Jawando is a Democratic strategist, council member at large in the Montgomery County, Maryland. And Rachel Bovard is the senior director of policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute, co-author of Conservative Knowing What to Keep. Two great friends of the show. And we're so happy to have an Obama for America alumnus to defend his former boss.
We picked this topic
here.
special for you, Will. You're welcome.
So, okay, to set this up, we talked about this
Hopefully
earlier.
The online community will support me.
I would not count on that. President Obama, he's been meeting with a lot of former candidates. He's let it known to acquaintances. He'd let it be known that when Bernie looked like he might be doing better, that he would speak out to stop him from being a nominee. People close to him have said that they could not foresee a world in which he did not actively oppose Sanders if it looked like he were to become the nominee. I mean, a lot of us will think that this is just the fact that Obama can't grapple that a Bernie nomination would be a direct repudiation of his legacy.
Yeah, and I don't think so. I think it's more related to, look, Barack Obama believes in his core that we need to come together. And that's who he is. That's what he ran on at a time when we were divided even then. It was hard to imagine that we'd be this divided now, but we were divided back then. He gave his opening speech where Lincoln stood, and that's one of his biggest.
Springfield?
In Springfield. So that's a core to who he is. And a lot of people, we've talked about this before, put on Obama all their hopes and aspirations wherever they were on the ideological spectrum. Yeah. And he accepted that and took that burden. But he was who he is. He is who he says he is, and acted that way. So I don't think it's out of character for him to say someone who challenges that on the right or the left, there's the extreme, that he's going to want to push back against that.
But ironically though, on the other hand, like Sanders consistently has the highest favorability ratings. He has a coalition that is multiracial, and it's mostly young. It's not really that multi-generational. But, when you ask voters who will unify the party, who will unify the country, Biden is one, Bernie's usually number two. So I don't know that I buy that he's opposing Bernie because Bernie's a divider. I mean, maybe he sees it that way, but it's not the way that most of America sees it.
What do you think, Rachel?
I think it goes to this idea, and as much as I want to hit Obama, I think it's on both parties, where you have these party elites, because Obama's now a party elite, sort of finger wagging at the rest of them, saying, I will decide for you, I will anoint. Right? I will pick my successor, whoever that will be. And, to a great extent, the right tried to do this. And this is how we got Trump. Right? Because I think you got a lot of people that said, actually, no, you're not going to do this. You're going to continue to do this. I'm going to give you the biggest disruptor of all time. Hello, Trump.
And that's the thing, though, Will, is about Obama. He says he's a uniter in chief. I mean, look, he divided this country more than anybody. I mean, we are more divided. We are more divided because of Barack Obama and his policies. I mean, under his presidency, we became one of the most ripped apart nations. Now, look, the Obama people like to blame the right for that, but I think that he had quite a bit as much to do with it as well. And so when you look at it, it's because so much. So there's a great quote from a African-American supporter of Bernie Sanders, a New York Times story. I highlighted it yesterday, in which he talked about, he said, from Obama, all I got was a bunch of social justice talk, but he bailed out Wall Street, he didn't save Main Street, and this time I'm not going to fall for it again. This was in the context of not supporting a Cory Booker or a Kamala Harris. I mean, I don't think Obama has grappled with that. I don't think he really has.
Well, there were many. To your first point, you said a lot there, but it's hard to have it both ways. It's hard to say he's a super socialist divider, but he didn't do enough for the.
I never called him a socialist.
Well, I'm just saying for those who say that he divided us. Right. I think his presidency was in the center. I mean, he focused in on healthcare. He made compromises. He did what he thought he needed to do to move us forward. Some of us who were working there at the time wanted him to push immigration and criminal justice reform sooner and harder, but we understood the choice that he made. And I think, when you had McConnell and others opposing him from the very beginning, he had to make the decision of how he was going to proceed. And to to couch it in the terms of that he's dividing, I don't think you can do that. I think if you look at, he really brought out his presidency, he didn't do it, brought out some of the worst parts of America, some of the deep racism. I often said the night he won, I was in Ohio, where I worked for 6 months. And I remember we were elated. We came out, I was taking the trash down at the supporter housing I was living at. And the guy next door is a middle-aged white guy, said, well, I guess racism is over. It was like 1 a.m. in the morning. It was like, I knew right then that was going to bring all that out and people were going to, but that wasn't Obama. It was just the history of our nation. So, but I think he governed in the middle, and that pissed off people on the left. But he didn't govern as a leftist.
But at the same
he
time,
didn't govern as an economic leftist, and that was the real.
That was the problem. But at the same time, I think you're right. There was definitely a cultural backlash.
Yeah.
But I also think that puts all the blame on voters and avoids any sort of self-reflection on what in his term may have led to Trump. I mean, you can't escape the fact that Obama's term ends and the next thing we get is Trump. Not to mention, you also can't escape the fact that over the 8 years of his presidency, Democrats lost the House, they lost the Senate,
well, he didn't focus on team building. I agree with you on that.
1,000 state, House, and legislative seats. So there was a lot going on there.
What specifically would you say are the things that he did that led to that? Because I think
well, it was the economic centrism. I mean, that was really the problem. That, still going with the same trade deals, staffing up with Wall Street execs.
You can argue that. You can make that argument.
Bailing out Wall Street, and no one is held accountable. I mean, you want to talk about, now we want to have all this conversation about, the norms and guardrails and rule of law applies to everybody. Where was that when bankers were destroying the global economy?
What do you think, Rachel, quickly? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone sitting from where I sit, which is the conservative side of the right, is going to look at Obama and say he governed from the middle, right? No. Like, I think
he did, though.
But economically. But from the cultural, he was actually a very culturally far left.
There was a lot of the priorities that he pushed through Congress when he bothered to work with Congress at all were party line opposition from the right. And when Congress didn't do what he wanted, he picked up, his pen in the phone and passed DACA, which now is being litigated in front of the Supreme Court, under
this is let me just say, this is a guy who, how many times did he go to the dang well to get a grand bargain to cut Social Security and what was the thing called, the budget deal that had the draconian cuts, and I mean, he on sequestration. That's where I'm Look, on economic issues, there is no doubt that he governed from the center and tried to be conciliator, and that to me was I wish he'd been the socialist.
See, the thing is, he was like neoliberal center right almost, but then very culturally far left, and that's what broke the country in half. Is when it sold out the middle class and tried to push everybody on cultural issues far beyond where they would go. This is a great segue to our next one, which is that under President Obama, our workforce was dying faster than any other wealthy country. This is an American Medical Association journal that was published from the year all the way up to 2017. It shows a massive decrease in life expectancy for, I think it's up 30% amongst the prime age working population of 25 to 64, and it, quote, paints a bleak picture of a workforce plagued by drug overdose, suicide, organ system diseases while grappling with economic stresses. And Rachel, one thing in particular caught my eye, which is that the majority of these rising mortality deaths are in areas ravaged by opioid epidemic and decline in manufacturing jobs in particular.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in this moment, right? We're approaching Christmas. Everybody's going to be on their phones ordering from Amazon, not thinking about the fact that these Amazon workers are dying on the floor and peeing in bottles to make that happen, and that typifies, I think, where we are on this issue. And I worry about it because on the left you have folks that are saying, well, a living wage will save everything. Let's do that. And on the right, you have people who won't even acknowledge that this is a problem. Right. And so I'm not really, this is an existential crisis for the country that I'm not really sure we're prepared to address.
And we've been sold a bill of goods that it was all good and all great as long as GDP was going up and the stock market was
GDP is great.
And we could buy cheap Chinese crap from Walmart. That was supposed to be the American dream.
Well, we're still being sold that bill.
Absolutely.
If you look at the White House today, that's what they say. But I mean, people know that it's not true. To your point, whether it's Amazon and these big corporations, people are dying. I will say that the industrial Midwest is catching up to many other communities in America, like the African American community, Latino community, who have had bad health outcomes in the inner city, and have had horrible. Take infant mortality, maternal mortality in the black community 3 times, and we've done nothing and been silent on it. And so now it's kind of catching up, and everyone is being impacted. And I think it is an existential crisis, and that's why people like Bernie and Warren and policies of big structural change are taking root, particularly with young people. But we do have to figure it out.
Look, the Trump.
It's not gonna work.
Look, I know. Look, I have been extraordinarily critical of Trump here for selling out to a lot of these Goldman Sachs people and not pushing some of the economic populism that he ran on. But he said it yesterday when he had his rally down in Florida, when he said, "I'm working against a corrupt system which is working to keep you down and going against these elites." Now, whether that's actually true or not, the thing is that's what the central message that people want to hear is, Rachel.
Yeah. No, I think corporatism is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And we are just starting to see, I think, the consequences of it is this study. And I think one thing in particular that struck me from this is that it's uniquely American.
It is.
Life expectancy in every other country is going up except for America.
And we're the wealthiest.
And we are the wealthiest, right? And I think that the root of that rot is corporatism.
Right. The addiction crisis, I mean, whether it's actually drugs or porn or our phones or whatever, we're a nation of addicts. We're, drugged up on pharmaceuticals to relieve our anxiety. We've been sold this hollow values of consumerism and corporatism, and this is not a partisan statement.
And as long as Wall Street is making money, we're fine.
GDP is great, right?
Right.
GDP's up 3 whatever percent. I mean, and that's the thing is, look, Matt Stoll said this about Obama, which is that there's only one metric that really matters here, or two: fertility rate and life expectancy. Fertility rate plummeted after 2008. You can't put that all on Obama. A lot of that was the economic recession, but life expectancy began to decline under his presidency.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think we often forget of when he took office. I often say only a black man would take office when everything was falling apart. We were about to go into a depression. He had to pull us out. The stimulus which did great things, had to do that. Set up the CFPB with Elizabeth Warren. Did Wall Street reform, which didn't go far enough. But we were in crisis mode, and this kind of data predated Obama. We've been on this corporatism track for a long time.
I agree, but
now, did he do enough to turn the Titanic around? No, but we certainly aren't now.
That's his problem with the presidency. He looked at it as a ship that you can turn 2 degrees right, 2 degrees left, and then eventually you might end up 90 degrees to the right or left. But that's not what people want. What this country wants is a wheel that they pull
I
all the
agree with
way.
you. You have to stick the oar in and it might break. But you at least shifted it a bit. And that's not his philosophy.
That was a quote directly from him.
What worries me, though, is that we don't have a solution on either side, right? You had Obama, who could have come in and done a lot more than he did. But I mean, you have Republicans who look at this Republican Senate. The only thing they have done in this 116th Congress is K Street and Wall Street priorities. That is it.
Let's kick them out.
I think we need to give a bigger platform, I think, to those on the right, like Josh Hawley and others. Marco Rubio, I think, stuck his toe in this water, who are starting to call it out. But I think the response on the right has said, well, they're statists. Well, no, that's not true. They're actually trying to solve this problem. So give them a bigger platform.
That's the role of government. The role of government is to help people.
They need to know that there are people, that the people are with them, and that some people in the elite are beginning to wake up.
Let's close on a hopeful note of, I think there are signs on the right and the left that people are waking up, that voters are not going to put up with this anymore, and they're going to help us chart a different path. That's what we're going to stick with today.
That's what I'm thankful for.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll have more Rising after this.